Hello everyone, welcome back to Casual History. Today we're going to be getting into Egyptian pyramids and mysteries. So yeah, let's get into it. So today we have a guest with us, don't we, Jacob?
Yeah.
Jared, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
We thought it would be interesting to bring on a third for some commentary. There's a lot to get into today.
Is there?
I've done so much research. My computer is full of notes, and I'm
excited because you've been talking to me all week about this episode in particular. Like, you haven't spoiled anything for me, but at least you've been like every now and then getting excited and telling me that you're like chomping at the bit to go ahead and record it.
I really am. There would be random facts or things I would read, and I just want to say it or I want to talk to someone about it.
Sure.
But this is a subject I've had to keep inside.
Well,
so
now's the time. Now's the time to let it out. By the way, this is the first time, like, also on the podcast talking about our name, our official name, which is Casual History now, which I love.
Yeah.
And we like, just last episode, how casual and how we just literally just like threw it together. At least the last part after we recorded it. But yeah,
it was a good test run as our first episode.
It was really fun.
But
yeah,
gets us into now.
That's right.
So welcome, Jared.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome to the thing.
On the second
happy
episode.
to be here. Yeah. Second episode.
Happy to be here.
Do you know much about history?
I know a little bit. A little bit.
bit.
I'm here just kind of like along for the ride and just kind of listen and give my own take about what I think about opinions and
Yeah,
stuff.
so make it very entertaining, Jeffrey, because he needs it to be like a movie.
Yes,
Roger
please.
That's what you're saying.
Keep my attention.
Roger that. So I wanted to start. Let's
Oh,
just
we're gonna go ahead,
into
jump
it.
right
If
in.
you want
Okay.
Okay.
to.
I'm down.
I wanted to start with a story that I thought kind of encapsulates. How do you say that word?
Encapsulated.
There you go.
Encapsulate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The kind of mystery and aura of the pyramids and what it's kind of led throughout history. Just a
Of course, Transformers.
yeah, it's
all
Aliens,
connected.
It's
man.
always been a thing, right? It's
aliens.
something we've wondered about. So I thought I'd start with a story from Napoleon. So this is back in 1798, when France was really at like a height of its power.
Sure.
And the only rival out there was really England. And so during this time, they didn't want to directly attack England, right? So he basically got an army together and went to Cairo. And he was fighting. It's called the Battle of the Pyramids, actually. And where he won.
Creative name.
Yeah.
Very good.
Against the Ottomans. I think there was over 21,000 opposing Ottomans to the French. So, but they won. So regardless, okay. So they occupied Egypt and they now were at the pyramids. And supposedly there's a story when they first got there and saw the pyramids that Napoleon told everyone to wait outside and that he was going to go in by himself.
Dude, hell yeah.
So he walks into the pyramids.
Like a real man.
And he doesn't come out for 7 hours.
What was he doing?
So when he returns, he said he looked white as a ghost, and he said he would take this story to his grave and that he was not going to tell anyone anything. And it kind of allured to, there was speculation of him talking to the gods or him seeing ghosts or basically all of these myths kind of arose around that story.
Not all the gold buried with the kings of Egypt there in their tombs.
Right. But supposedly there's a story that Napoleon had this transformative experience inside the pyramids.
Right.
And walks out.
Well, they're already kind of like that spiritual. They're already like a symbol for that. Like,
yeah.
they're already kind of a beacon for that.
And but when he walks out, right, he's also king of propaganda. And he knew this was his opportunity. I think so.
Huh.
And so there's a story also when one of his leading generals, when Napoleon's on his deathbed, basically asks, so what did you see? I need to know. Tell me what you saw. What happened?
Me.
And he gives a smirk and he opens his mouth like he's about to say something and then closes his mouth and basically says, I can't tell you. And no one knows what happened.
He wants to die a legend.
Seriously?
Here's the sad part. It has been factually proven that story was basically propaganda. That Napoleon propped himself up through the use of that kind of story, that he was never ever he never touched the pyramids. He was never even inside. He never walked. Yeah. But I thought that was an interesting story of how it's been used.
Right.
To garner really like a
support.
Yeah, support, myth.
Like, would you follow a
legend.
man if he was like, if people came back and they were like, dude, he walked into the pyramids for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Said he saw something he cannot explain. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's a god amongst men.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting story, but I thought I'd start with that.
Yeah.
Just as a use
That's
to
pretty good.
kind of explore that idea.
Also, just to get this out of the way,
Yeah.
we all know that Napoleon was not short, right?
He wasn't?
No.
I did not know that.
That's a complete myth.
Okay, we're going. That's
Propaganda.
another.
And that was
episode.
propaganda from other people trying to sell him short, doing the opposite. Basically, painting. I don't know how it started, but like all the paintings and stuff like that. That was all despite him. Like that was he's definitely not short. He was average height.
Interesting.
So just a little side.
That
note.
is
Keep
another
going.
episode we're gonna have to get into Napoleon.
So then how tall was he officially? Can you look it up?
Yeah, we can do that.
Sure.
This is important to know.
It's important to know that he wasn't like in crazy short.
Because like how tall did they think he was originally? Or
He was 5'6" according to
Okay, so
Google.
that's short, but like maybe that. I mean, again,
Maybe the depictions tried to make him 5 foot, like maybe tried to ag him on a little bit because he was already short and then exaggerated that. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the reason why people would say he's kind of short.
George Washington was 6'2"?
Yeah, that was another recommended height under Google when I looked at Napoleon.
Yeah.
So, okay, to get into this off the bat, off of that story, I wanted to try to provide the Orthodox view of the timeline of the pyramids, of what is known through Egyptologists.
What we know so far.
Yeah, what we think is fact, even though some of it is assumption, and I'll get into maybe. There's a lot of reasons why people dispute this timeline, but
because of aliens, yes,
of course,
right. So the first pyramid was supposed to have been built in 2650 in the third dynasty under King Josa. It was built in stone, and it's known as a step pyramid because it looks more like steps and big square blocks, kind of like a layered cake.
Sure.
Which is pretty interesting. But it became a tourist attraction for the ancients, which was another thing that kind of led into, I think, the Great Pyramids being built.
Am I wrong in thinking that too, that it was for burial though initially, like that was the initial reason to build it?
So yes, there was before that the first Great Pyramid or the Great Burial Site. I don't have the date in front of me, but there was a great burial site that was discovered with over 500 bodies in tombs next to each other, and it was more like pits. But it was kind of the first sign of a king being revered as a god, because as the king died. So the thing that was interesting about this burial site was they were all sealed at the same time. So these 500 people that died with this king killed themselves or were sacrificed on purpose to try to die with the king.
To die on the same day as the king.
Right. They were going to be buried next to him, which was like a big deal.
Right, because they wanted to go to the afterlife with him.
Right. And that was kind of the first
like
step, though, to the power of the king really being
the
like,
Pharaoh,
I'm a god.
Yeah.
Which was, I thought that was kind of jarring.
No, yeah.
Can you imagine the loyalty these people had to their king?
Mm-hmm. There was, I think it was over 500 graves that were right next to each other, next to the king.
I wonder,
sealed at the same time.
I can't help but wonder if like all those weren't voluntary.
I don't know.
And there was a lot of like more, I don't know, ritual.
Definitely cult
into it.
Yeah. You know? We think of like mass suicide cult now.
Sure, but maybe they all weren't complicit in it.
Right.
That's all I'm trying. All I'm trying to say is 500 people. You telling me one of the two didn't have doubts?
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. But it stopped. That was kind of that was the last, I think, of those type of rituals, because they started realizing all the people in power are now gone, because it was a lot of his officials, a lot of the people that
Sure. All
were
the people
next
that
to
worked
him,
with
his friends, like the people that were in the ranks. And so once they died, new people had to take over, and it wasn't really a great system for
for future use. Yeah, for sure. Because then you got rid of all your generals that had any experience. Everybody that worked with the last regime.
Right.
What I'm more interested now, I'm really curious of like, what was there? Was it like poison? Was it
supposedly it was stabbing? So it was like a ritual
joking.
stabbing where the depiction that was shown anyway was that there was a man, of course, with his arms behind his back.
Yeah.
Right, and the person in front of him would stab him. He'd fall back into the grave.
Wow.
And then they sealed it all together.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense shit right
there.
Yeah. Holy fuck. That's loyalty.
So when I was going through this research, that was one of the first big points I kind of...
Yeah.
I was like, that's
the first rabbit hole that you're like, okay.
Yeah, they started to become cult leaders. I mean, essentially they were revered as gods.
Well,
so
to have the following that they did, to have them build, like, probably how long it took them to physically build these pyramids?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for humans to do
Supposedly
so back then. Yeah, but you're talking like years and years and years. And so to not inspire, sorry, because that might be the wrong word, because these people might be contracted to do this in order to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to have that kind of influence over people to make them follow through with doing something that huge.
I do want to we'll get into it with the pyramids of Giza specifically, the creation of it, that I don't want to jump too far ahead, but the myth that there were slaves is incorrect. They weren't slaves.
So it was
a government workforce, essentially.
But just over like 30, 40 years, right?
No. So again, 20 years. Supposedly.
In 20 years.
13 to 20 years, which is
working
part of the
every
reason.
Single day, probably.
Oh, trust me. Let me get into the math, but let's go ahead and get into...
Okay, because for it to be 20 years has to be insane.
Yeah. So that being the step pyramid is kind of the first monument, but there was another interesting fact there where there was graffiti found that was dated to 1300 BC. Almost like, how there's graffiti on a big monument nowadays that says, just like graffiti.
Yeah.
Right? So there was graffiti found on the step pyramid in 1300 BC.
Okay.
That was kind of praising Djoser, the creator of the step pyramid.
Is that what it was?
Basically. They were praising him and kind of revered him as the creator of stone.
Oh.
Which was interesting.
So it was good graffiti.
Yeah, but
not defacing.
Think about that.
Someone's grave.
Like you create something in the ancient world that has become a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
And then 1300 BC, which is still a long time ago.
Imagine like a whole civilization coming to your grave as like a vacation.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Imagine that.
But the Great Pyramid of Giza was built in 2570, supposedly. Mm-hmm. I want to say that because this is the Orthodox view.
Of course. All these things are very like loose because most people probably don't know the exact, right?
Well, there's so much disputing this timeline.
Okay.
Like a lot. And so that's where it kind of gets into...
This is the general consensus far as we know.
Exactly.
Okay.
So 2570 was built by King Khufu. It's supposed to be his burial site, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of reasons why it is thought not to be that.
They didn't find his body there?
So here, let's get into it. So first of all, there's no body found in the tomb.
So it's empty.
Okay? The tomb is empty. There's also no hieroglyphs or any symbols anywhere inside the sarcophagus,
right,
or the chamber that it's in. There's no hieroglyphs, no nothing. No, it's just pure,
blank.
Huge. I mean, these things are huge, megalithic granite. It's granite inlaid tomb. Okay, so that's just like
no writing,
nothing,
no dead body, nothing. Almost like an unused room.
Blank. But there is a sarcophagus in there when we supposedly found it, right? Which makes you think a lot of things. But
sure.
So to give you a scale, the Great Pyramid of Giza is 455 feet tall.
Holy crap!
And another interesting fact is the burial, the sarcophagus is normally you walk down. So up to this point, you would walk down into the earth. And then there'd be a room with the sarcophagus of the mummy or of the king.
Mm-hmm. That's what I know,
right?
Personally,
this one is not. Great Pyramid of Giza, you walk up.
Oh.
Okay, so that already gives you a little bit.
Ascension.
Yeah, like what is this? What's going on here? Okay,
Mystery.
just different. The misnomer, like we talked about, that it was built by slaves was incorrect. Supposedly, not supposedly, there's been studies and there's been research, and they found almost like an entire city that built up around this monument.
Yeah.
And I think the workforce was estimated between 18,000 to 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And the timeline is also interesting. So it's estimated between 13 and 20 years that this thing was built. Now, that would mean that 2.3 million blocks, right, is the total for the pyramid. That it would mean these blocks would be laid every 3 minutes for 14 years straight.
There's no way.
Yeah, right? Okay.
Can you imagine taking that
But
long
like,
to build something?
But also, just the fact of like, I know you probably already have this fact on here, but the size of these stones.
2 to 5 tons each.
Yeah. So
custom.
So every 3 minutes,
How?
for that to be possible, the kind of system they had to work out, the kind of synergy, but like again, nonstop. That's pretty impractical. And they say that would estimated to 14 years.
That would be 14 years, and it's estimated between 13 to 20.
So if you give leniency that it's not exactly on the dot
every 5 to 10 minutes, you would be laying. That'd be 24/7. This is not like just your work day. No, this is 24/7. Supposedly, it would have to be laid every 2 to 3 minutes, and that would take 14 years.
How?
And I don't think that encompasses so on the outside of the pyramid, it was covered in limestone. Did you know this?
Yes. Yeah, to
So
protect it from
right. It's
weathering.
been stripped. Of course, it got stripped. I think in the 1800s or 1700s.
That's why it's lasted so long. Is that limestone covering? It's a protection against elements. Correct?
It was also smooth. So if you can imagine this pyramid that's huge was smooth on every side, and white limestone. It's just like I imagine that
the
scenario.
The system to build it had to be, but again,
Insane.
like to get the engineering feat, to be able to get a workforce, even if you're doing it 24/7, there had to be some sort of efficient way to get those stones up for that to be anywhere close to possible. To me, the first thought when you said that was impossible.
So this is another interesting fact. Supposedly they were quarried, the stone blocks were quarried a few miles from the place, but the limestone was, if I'm not mistaken, like it would be like traveling from Nashville to Clarksville, like an hour away, but you're doing that on foot, and you're quarrying these limestone blocks, 2-ton blocks. And supposedly the way they did this, there's theories of it. When you're building the pyramid, you're either using ramps, right?
Sure.
And you know those old movies where you'd see the people with the ropes and they'd pull it up.
Yeah.
And supposedly they would use water. They'd throw down water to make it easier to slide the.
But there's still
sleds.
2 tons.
I know. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
I really want to talk to these scientists that believe this timeline and how they came up with it, because it's very hard for my brain to wrap around. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm completely
that
wrong.
had to be put in place.
Yeah. I can't imagine people doing that now. Not that we have a better workforce now, but just imagining that type of manpower that would require is just
but we would have again, we have things now, engineering, to make those things kind of easier, obviously.
And they still take
like pulleys,
a long time.
Like
like how long have they been working on the roads around here? You know, like just think about that compared to
years.
I feel like the roads in Oklahoma are still being worked on like 5 or 6 years down the road.
Definitely.
So
so that either speaks to the way, if this is correct, how it was done, that either speaks to the way they either loved the king or how well they were actually taken care of. Because supposedly, again, I'm going to use that word a lot, it was found that they were importing, I think per 2 people, it was like 17 cows and certain amount of chickens every week, like a huge amount of food was being provided every week for these workers.
I was like,
so they're like, we're going to take care of you guys. And you guys are going to work for 14 years straight.
Yeah, there's systems of like blacksmith. There's medicine. there's places basically that were built around this pyramid that came just from the work, that was being done there. It's like having 100,000 people near just in an area and being like, well, yeah, we're going to start a city. We're going to have to because we have to sustain this.
Yeah, and it'd be a lot easier to have those things close to the work proximity.
Right.
To what you need. Yeah.
So that was interesting. I just thought those little facts were interesting, which of course bring questions.
Of course.
To me. Now, some of the weird facts about the pyramids, of course, that they were the cardinal points, the 4 points of the pyramid, that they're in line with true north.
Right.
With, I think, within half of a degree. So it's like about 5 inches off, supposedly, of the pyramid. They were off.
But the ancient world were masters of astrology.
Right. And
it's
also
quite amazing.
Yeah.
And
which
wasn't
is
there
interesting.
they were lined up with other same pyramids across the world?
Yes.
If you made a straight line across a map, they all connected.
I don't know which
And they're
ones. That's
all
probably worth a good Google if you're listening.
Are you talking about the Mayan temples too, or are you just talking about
temples all over the world.
They're in line with some other pyramids that were kind of built on this similar. I think also because of the geometry of the thing. Another interesting fact is that they were, I think it's like a 23.2 to 1 ratio that you can do the size of the earth, right? If you took this pyramid and blew it up into the size of the earth,
sure,
it would be half, and it would be basically, again, off the longitude and latitude by maybe 0.07. So the math is incredible.
Yeah, it would have to be so meticulous.
Now, another thing about the precision of the pyramids is all of these were hand, of course, carved or hand quarried. And so when they were laying these in, they almost lock in
to each other?
Right, they lock into each other. So the precision on that is they're not just laying blocks down.
Right.
They're locking in to where you can't, in a lot of these places, you can't even fit a hair. Like they've done tests where you can't put a hair in between the blocks. They're that.
Yeah, that close together.
Yeah, they're that well
put
together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Aliens.
No, keep going. Keep telling me things that seem impossible.
So it's really interesting, right? Another thing I found interesting, which is
I'm just getting more and more belief in aliens as you keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Another thing that was found near the pyramids was a pit that was not a pit, but it was limestone covered, and it was they found a boat right next to the pyramid. They found the pieces of a boat. And supposedly it was thought that it was for when the king died, that this was the boat it would ride in the sun, because they worship the sun god. It was shown that it wasn't ever used in the water before it was buried with the king. It was also taken apart. It wasn't like a full-on boat. It was like pieces of the boat in this pit, but it was rebuilt. It was rebuilt. It's really worth a Google. You can look it up.
So they built it on land. Just hear me out. So they built it on land. They tore it apart again.
Right.
And they rebuilt it underground.
No, we rebuilt it after we found it.
Oh.
We being modern people.
They just found pieces of boat. The pieces of a boat.
Yeah. Yeah, they found, and there was a total of 7 boats found across the 3 pyramids that are kind of near each other.
Again, I wonder if that's still connected to what they believe the afterlife stuff.
Right, you bring the stuff with you.
It was, they bring stuff with you, as well as they had many different beliefs about there had to be openings in the pyramids, so that way your spirit could
exits.
Yeah, in some place that was easy to find, so your spirit didn't get lost on its way to the afterlife.
Yeah.
They had a lot of different kind of beliefs like that,
which is what the thinking of these boats were.
Yeah,
right?
Or sail off to the heavens.
Exactly.
In your own boat, but we buried with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where part of the theory of the modern Egyptologists. So there's 3 different corridors in the Great Pyramid of Giza. There's the King's Temple, or the King's Chamber. There's the Queen's Chamber, which is kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another chamber down below, which is supposed to be something related to death, that him and the king would become one spiritually, which is interesting. But the Queen's Chamber is called the Queen's Chamber only because it's smaller than the King's Chamber.
Mm-hmm.
That there was nothing found. It's empty in the queen's chamber. Like there's nothing found there. It's just an empty room.
Is it because? Oh, okay.
But they think it was built because, in case of an early death by the king, that they would have something ready, as they were building the king's chamber,
right?
And just in case of an unexpected death,
that they could still bury him there, and he could still be buried in an actual room.
And they had all the you know how you were talking about the airways that would lead to the stars or point at the stars, for him to make the journey to afterlife and be able to return to his body in the sarcophagus.
Right.
It was also done in the queen's chamber, but then it was ritually sealed.
Yeah.
So they think it was.
Then that makes the most sense. That I could believe that then.
Right.
So that was like, okay, well, this room is not in use anymore.
And
we have a bigger, grander room for you, sir.
Right, but the thing is, there's no markings on the sarcophagus either. It's blank. The one where supposedly King Khufu, and also the only reason why we think it's King Khufu is because after people did exploration through dynamite, actually.
In the pyramid?
In the pyramids, they went above
exploration.
It. Yeah, it was only found through dynamite, and you can go through it now if you're a Egyptologist or person leading a tour, I guess.
Right.
But there's little corridors where there's almost I don't know how to explain this for people who are listening can understand. Like almost imagine like a little rectangle box above this big corridor. And then almost a skinny elevator room, about maybe, I don't know how tall, but then another little square box, and then one more into this kind of...
Like a zipper pattern?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And it was thought to be to relieve stress and weight, so it wouldn't collapse. All the weight of the pyramid would collapse on the main chamber. But what was supposed to have been found there was the name Khufu. It was
in those chambers that people weren't supposed to be in.
Right, but it could have been from the workers who were building the pyramid.
Right.
But there's so much.
You tell me someone couldn't just sign their name.
Exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah.
There's
like
so
I
much.
built this. I deserve to put my name in this.
I'd do that.
But inside there was also markings of just random people. Like if you can look this up online if you want to.
Sure.
And look up photos
I didn't
and
know
videos.
that they found like workers like handy marks on there. Like,
and supposedly there was a boat and with like wind behind it. And
like in a drawing?
Right, like a drawing, and could have been interpreted as we have to speed this up. Yeah, there's random interpretations of we got to get this done. Or
interesting.
Yeah,
that's super cool. Like I'm really into that because it kind of humanizes the idea of all the people that worked on that so hard.
Mm-hmm. Because people do that now. Like you leave your handprint in concrete.
Right, but just something that humanizes the pyramids and makes it less of a
mystery, more of
it makes it less of
human.
A like enigma, right? Like that the world made it out to be, or makes it out to be right now, which it is. It's just because it's a mystery because we weren't there. We don't know how it happened. How much work would have to go into it, I'm sure. But it's just very interesting. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
I thought that was pretty weird, but I want to kind of get into some of the discrepancies.
Okay.
And maybe some of the new findings that have happened recently within the last few years. Okay, so one of them being there's this technology. I don't know if it's light ray exactly, if that's the right word.
Like LiDAR?
LiDAR, that's what I was thinking of.
Where they send lasers down below the earth and target underground things. That's what LiDAR
right,
is.
But there's a similar process for using, I believe, different kind of particles that shoot through. They've shot through the pyramid to kind of feel out, like if it's empty space, it'll show up that it's empty space. And
for sure.
Because it'll lose momentum. This particle will lose momentum going through the pyramid. And supposedly, they have found a cavern the size of, let me see what, I think it was 100 feet.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
Above or almost in line with, so walking up to the king's chamber, there's this big, it's like huge. I don't know I can't remember what they call it. But you when you're walking up, there's these huge limestone megalithic blocks that are just the walk up. And they're really huge. I can't remember how tall, but they're
You mean like huge. As you're about to walk into the actual pyramid?
Right, and it leads up to the king's chamber.
Okay.
But above that, there's supposed to be a huge 100-foot empty
space
which could be another room, which could be who knows what.
Okay.
Huh.
And there could be things in it.
So have they even
Why
tried
have they-
to?
They
like,
have not.
get to
No,
it?
they haven't, because it would require
Permits
ruining
or
right.
ruining, yeah.
a national.
You're
fair.
right, a monument.
But the
Yeah.
secrets are worth
Are they
so
though?
much.
But are they? Like, I mean, again, like we just found we're using technology where you don't have to touch a single thing, and we're sending like particles that push through objects.
Yeah,
Here we
but
go.
just
We didn't have
knowing-
to excavate anything.
It was
But
the size
knowing
of
that
Statue of
there's-
Liberty. Sorry, I just want to throw that in there.
You could fit the Statue of Liberty.
You
in
could
there?
fit the Statue of
See-
Liberty in this cavern that was found.
But that's so hard, just knowing that there could be answers or anything just on the other side, and we don't want to mess with it.
Answers to
Obviously,
what,
'cause
Jared?
it's- I mean, to anything. Who knows?
How they did what they
How
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
The accuracy of the pyramid itself being like mathematically, there's a thing called sacred geometry about it,
Mhm.
that it could prove that they knew longitude before anything about a modern clock. So you have to have a really good timer to be able to measure longitude. And back then, how did you do that? So the numbers of the pyramid, when you break it down, how wide, how tall, and you add that up to their cardinal points, and there's a ratio I spoke about a second ago. Let me look it up to double check the ratio. Egypt ratio Giza.
So basically, obviously in layman's terms, this is so mathematically like perfect shape wise.
It's only off 5 inches, basically.
Huh.
From
5 inches from being a perfect triangle.
square. First of all, being a perfect square at the base,
Right.
it's 5.5 inches off.
With 2-ton stones that they pre-cut themselves.
Mhm. Oh, not even to
Not pre-cut
mention,
themselves, but
this
cut.
was up on a plateau, so they had to build a base.
A platform.
So this was not just we're building this on something. They had to build a base
Of
of
like-
Jeez.
digging and putting limestone, or not
Right, they had to
limestone,
build a
but
flat
stone.
base.
Yeah, they had to build a base, and
But
they had
that base has to be perfect
and
for
it's smooth.
Yeah.
It's smooth.
Wow.
And the fact to build stuff inside of it.
Another thing that I didn't quite get into, but I
I mean,
would like
you're talking
to.
about shifting ground. You're all of a sudden taking ground, right? Like I understand,
Mhm.
but if you're manipulating the ground before you build anything, and then you're bringing 2-ton stones in
Mhm.
to set on top of
No
that
way, man.
land that you probably worked on to try to get it perfect, right?
Mhm.
Like unless they just completely cut it out of rock at the bottom.
And the base is
No,
also interlocked.
I'm not even talking about the stones. I'm just
No
literally
way.
talking about how much weight is on that ground
Mhm.
that they manipulated. I don't know how much they manipulated it.
Let's see how much the Great Pyramid of Giza supposedly weighs.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Actually, you want to
you telling me the ground wouldn't shift a little bit? You telling me that like it wouldn't give to these huge 2-ton stones, and that you couldn't really control like how much it like pushed into the ground?
Yeah, it's insane.
How are you supposed to get a perfect? Yeah, that just seems
Pretty crazy, right?
Mhm.
everything about this is crazy.
And we're gonna say that a lot, but
I know
it's just
but
because
it's
there's
true.
so much not known.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but your imagination. I get why people think aliens,
Me
man.
too.
Yeah, I'm one of those
Me
people. I'm just
too.
like aliens.
You really, Jared? You want to explore
Yes,
that?
aliens.
You-
Just aliens.
Do you love the ancient
joking?
alien show?
Yes, I watch it all the time.
Honestly?
hmm
Wow.
Wait, so you are a true believer that
I
aliens?
I don't know if I'm a
are
true believer,
involved
but I'm very
the
interested in
pyramids?
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
Do you think that they had connections to?
you know, who knows, man? I don't know. I mean, I'm not closed-minded to it.
Yeah.
I'm open to all the possibilities, so I wouldn't put anything against it. You never
Wow.
know.
Well, we're gonna get into more of that. Let's take a break real quick because
Okay.
I want to get into on the once we come back, the possibility of an ancient civilization that had more knowledge than we think it did, that led to them to be able to work how they worked.
Atlantis, boys.
Yep. Let's go.
Okay.
Wasn't that wonderful?
That was a great break.
That's amazing.
So
Just a nice little breather.
coming out of the break, I do want to answer a question that was posed before.
Yes.
The Pyramid of Giza weighs about 5.75 million tons.
It's not much.
So light.
Yeah, pretty light. It's made up of about 2.3 million blocks of stone that weighs about 2 to 3 tons each.
Yeah, no biggie.
There's a line here on Google that says, "Are you impressed or scared about how heavy the pyramids
Can I
are?"
answer both?
yeah.
Is that both, Bob?
Yeah.
Show me the board.
So, I mentioned before the discrepancies of possibly an ancient civilization, right?
Yeah, the scrolls of Alexander, possibly Atlantis. Where are we going? The Mayans.
We talked about the Orthodox view, the timeline. I didn't even get into the timeline of the beginning, supposedly in 3000 BC, and then there's a big timeline you can look up if you want to. There's a good site that kind of gives you the Orthodox view of the timeline. Called.
Yeah, go ahead.
ancientegypt.co.uk. And so you can go on there and you can click through, and they have a really good diagram of just the timeline. You can click on each little period, third dynasty, second
of what
dynasty.
They believe, when each pyramid came up, how long it took. Yeah,
a little bit of info on all of it, which is a good resource to have.
I like that.
But so there's a glaring issue with this timeline, according to some people.
Okay,
and it's the Sphinx.
Let's hear it.
These some people, do they live underground in a bunker?
No, these are
believe the Earth is flat.
No, these are people who've done their research a lot more than I have, like way more than I have. Really spent their years and time on this.
I'm in.
All right.
There was Anthony West. I think his name is Jonathan. Let me look his name up. Anthony West supposedly brought up a discrepancy in the Sphinx. So the Sphinx was pointing towards Leo, the constellation Leo.
Okay.
So if to reverse here, if you were to bring the timeline back of the stars during the times that 25,000 or during
when it was built,
it would point, of course, directly at the constellation Leo, and the pyramids of Giza would point at Orion's belt.
Okay.
And so Anthony West, I think I could be wrong. I'm so sorry if I'm saying the wrong name, but he brought up a discrepancy about the Sphinx, where if you look at the edges of the Sphinx, it looks like there's water erosion. Like, when you see like the Grand Canyon and there's water, like cuts through the.
Sure, of course.
It looks a certain way, right? And it was believed up to a certain point that it was
sitting in
wind and sand, right? That would cause it to look this way.
The weathering on it, yeah.
But it doesn't look like if you can look up the Sphinx and then look up wind and sand over years on a different structure.
Can I ask where?
In stone?
Where on the? You just mean in general on it?
No, so like the body of the Sphinx.
Right. So you're talking about the bottom half of it is like.
Let's not get to the nose or the head yet. Let's just go from the neck
submerged.
Down.
It
believed
looks like it's
it was
water.
over years of rainfall and flooding, and the only time that could have happened. Was the only time there was water in the Giza Plateau was in 12,500 BC. That's what this dates this Sphinx back to. And Anthony Koch, I think his name, Koch.
Okay.
He's a guy that knows this stuff, basically. Like, he knows everything about the wind and the rain and how it supposed to look after floods and stuff like that.
So geologist.
And he completely, he was kind of a skeptic at first, and then he gets on the site and he immediately goes, yeah, no, this is not sand and wind. This is water.
Okay, so what that would mean is that this thing is way older than
people even think.
People believed.
Now the the thing about the Egyptians, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Is that they had a timeline themselves of their whole history that goes back to 37,000 BC and their own history, what they would tell about these demigods that were the first of their kind, right?
Sure.
They had a belief system that goes back to 37,000 BC in their time.
Okay.
So, we're taking this from what we can date it, and what we think the timeline was of these buildings, and the Sphinx in general is a glaring issue. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Do they acknowledge any of this in their history of it being built? I would sure be a very big footnote for someone to brag about.
Right.
Well, Egyptian
supposedly,
history.
There's evidence that the Sphinx was rebuilt during their time, that they had to update it because it was old considered to the Egyptians at that period of time. That the Sphinx, you know how there's a face and there's a missing nose on it, right?
Yes.
That supposedly that was redone during that time. So there's a misdating when you look at the body of the Sphinx for how old it really is, and to the face, because it was supposed to have been updated, and like when we see an old built house, we rebuild the house from the 1800s, but it's still built in the 1800s. We just made it look good, right? And
right. So there might be newer stuff on the outside that when we're testing it is throwing off the meter.
Right. So, yeah. But what this would suggest, okay, now this could get into another podcast, or we can go into a little bit of it now.
Let's go.
It would suggest that there was an ancient civilization that had, obviously built this, right? So that would make this date of our Orthodox view of even the pyramids and just their world there a lot older than what we think of it as now.
Okay, so interesting little thing too. Obviously, not to get into this side of it, but there is also a lot of belief too that that the Bible kind of leads towards the Garden of Eden being in between two rivers, and have a lot of things that lean towards it being the Egypt area.
Huh.
I don't know if you know that or not, but there is a big belief. Again, I don't have. We should look it up and I should do some research on it.
Yeah, that would be a good
point. I've definitely heard a bunch of like people believe that the Garden of Eden was a physical place here on Earth, as it says that it would be basically the Egypt area is the Mecca.
There's also a theory about the Sphinx head was being rebuilt into something else, because if you notice that the head is significantly smaller than the actual body.
Right.
So they're saying that the Egyptians could have had a different form of head, or whether it was an animal or of some kind.
Well, and it
was turned.
Partly some of their old religion that I've found out, a big thing for the Egyptians were the religion is what really brought these people together, supposedly from just like an ideological standpoint, where it really give them something to unify everybody.
Right.
And there was an old religion that, of course, they worship the cow. There's reason to believe they worship the cow, and they call it was a goddess. It turned into, but like these religions weren't stagnant. They would change almost like the lion. Like there was a lion, right? And to tame the lion, the reason why you see some of the symbols of like a man with a lion head or a man with a different type of face on would be the embodiment of like taming this god or goddess to work for the people, or worshiping them, right? Which could play to that point that you just made about. It could have been, maybe it was an old, site, monument that was made of a lion, right? If it's a Sphinx, it looks like it's got paws, and maybe they then changed it to a human
face
head,
out of it.
Which could have been,
It could have been the work that they did on it. Because, again, like, if you're also talking about the proportions are like goofy looking.
Right,
like,
and if you expect them to make the pyramids with such precision, and then suddenly the Sphinx right next to it
like
is
a goofy looking
weird and off.
Yeah.
Right.
It could have been like they were
or that could have been underneath. Maybe the head part is the original part, and then they built the lion stuff around it as a refurbishment.
Yeah.
And then that part wore away at the top.
But a lot of this points to, so the thing I was talking about, longitude, earlier on, also comes back to this point of an ancient civilization, or ancient, at least, knowledge more than what we think they had, of course.
Of course.
Right? And it could have got lost. It could have gotten destroyed. And supposedly there's a good theory by Hancock, what's his full name? Again, I'm wrong with the names.
It's okay. It's a lot.
It's a lot of knowledge I've tried to take in.
Yeah. Not to derail your thing, too, I just thought of another topic I'm going to bring up that just sparked my interest about this kind of stuff as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Could never be more.
Because this just sparked a whole nother side, not totally off base of this, but something that's very interesting that people are finding off coasts and a bunch of really like brand new findings just because how much is underwater.
Well, that could play to this theory that Graham Hancock goes into a bit about. I know we're talking about the pyramids.
Yes.
Right. But this could be. I want to make this a point that I want to come back to in another podcast. That could be about specifically about this. Mm-hmm. But it really comes down to the end of that last ice age, that there was a comet that was supposed to have been hit
Yes. In fact, I believe they found. Are you talking about the comet that killed the dinosaurs?
No.
Oh,
That was millions. No. So I'm talking about 12,500 years ago, right? It dates around that time back to the point of where a lot of people, and supposedly it references that there was an ancient civilization that had knowledge of the sea, and there's reasons to believe that from a few different things. One being there's this map called the Pharaohs map, and the Pharaohs map was based on a lot of source maps that were a lot older,
right?
And it was made in 1700 by a general admiral, some sort of like title, and he made this map off of these source maps that have since been lost.
Okay.
And we just recently discovered this Pharaohs map in Turkey, if I'm not mistaken, and it was on a piece of gazelle skin.
Really?
Yeah, but it's only a piece of the map, and it supposedly shows...
Of what area?
Here we go. Antarctica before the ice cap.
What?
It was a map of Antarctica before the ice cap
and the coastline, and it shows the coastline of South Africa.
Interesting.
Yeah, South Africa. Yes, I think that's right. Or no, Venezuela. No. Shit.
Okay, so just pointing towards, obviously there. I mean, like there is so much stuff we don't know.
But it points to, and it got confirmed that the depiction
is correct.
Yeah, so underneath the ice of Antarctica, right? Mm-hmm. If there was a civilization there, of course, it's going to be ground to a powder, first of all. Yeah. You have these 2-mile thick sheets of ice that is grinding on the ground. So that whatever was there is gone.
It's gone. It's
but
dust.
The correct mapping of that, it correlates to this map.
Mm-hmm. So that means there were people who survived.
Seafaring had longitude because they were able to. So on maps, there's different versions of maps, which is what I want to get into in another podcast to really go deep into it. Okay. But this version of map basically proves that they knew longitude. Okay. Which supposedly longitude was not invented until longitude when a chronometer was made in like 1870. Don't fact check me on the timeline. Right. But when we first had our first kind of relevant clock or timer, basically. Right. So, but back to the pyramids. How this relates to the pyramids is that these the pyramids, the Sphinx, things that were built by them. Some of them could have been from an ancient civilization that was them, right? Like they could have been built at different times. Mm-hmm, sure. And you don't. Another theory that kind of opposes the Orthodox view is why start at the Giza pyramid, right? Because since the Giza pyramid, it all goes downhill. And of course, culturally things change, and I'm sure maybe they don't.
You mean like they didn't try to one up themselves after the pyramid?
It was a step pyramid that we think predates before the Giza pyramid. Right. There's another, I think it's called the Bent pyramid that comes in between that, and then the Giza pyramid by King Khufu. Right. So like the ratio of.
So you're saying that you're expecting something bigger to happen? I mean, there's got to be a stopping point.
It almost seems like they start at the top. They start with all of this knowledge and how to do this, how precision, that workforce, like everything is built to do this, right? Right. In such a like grand efficient way, manner. And then all of a sudden everything gets smaller from then on. Huh. Do you know what like it's almost like technology. Like we keep getting better iPhones. You don't start with iPhone 11 and then we're going to downgrade to iPhone 4 over 100 years. Right? You see what I'm saying?
But is there proof that there are different techniques as time goes on? Like that they're that they're using completely different techniques for these things? Because
someone has to learn.
But no, I mean the opposite. I mean, like, say if they're forgetting. Say if they have this knowledge to do this, whether that's regarding to other people being around, showing them, pass down information, right? That you could say, okay, so the theory is it gets lost over time. And
not just lost over time, that maybe the timeline is so off that the Great Pyramid of Giza is suspected as being the first, which is interesting to think about. Huh. It just kind of it's supposed to poke a hole in the thought that you start with the greatest iPhone and then you go relatively smaller. Now, of course, things do change culturally, what they're believing in. And I know I want to point on this little fact for fun. I know I'm going to jump ahead just a slight bit.
Go ahead.
There's a fun fact about the Dark Age, right before the Dark Age of, before the last pharaoh, before they kind of split into different little sections of themselves, that an interesting. I want to see this guy's name. There was a king that was about 90 years old, and to prove your fitness, right? This was kind of the beginning of the end for them being revered as gods.
Okay.
Which, how do you like to be this guy? He's about 90 to 80 years old,
Right.
and they have to do this kind of lap around a.
So the people
like
were
a track.
testing him to prove that he was a god because he was 90?
You have to, you have to. So for a celebratory thing, they do it's almost like a ritual. It's like every so often. I don't know what the time is.
Right.
But basically, he was 90 years old. And it would have been easy, of course, when you're a new king, you're 20, whatever, you run this track. You're supposed to go like two circles, I believe, is what they said, around this track to prove you're a god, right? To prove your fitness, basically.
Yeah, to prove that you're fit. Yeah.
But it relates to you being
godly and unstoppable. Yeah.
Well, this 90-year-old pharaoh or king.
For a 90-year-old, wait. What time is this? Because to live to 90-year-old?
I know.
Don't get me started. What?
Yeah, no. It's supposedly he was 90 years old.
They must have really liked him.
Yeah.
It's not about really liked him.
Or, the fact that he made it that long, without someone killing him or
I'm not talking about that.
Uprising.
I'm literally talking about the, people do not live that long. We're talking about, a couple hundred years ago, the median age to die was 30-something.
Well, look, here we go. It says he assumed the throne in 1279 BC based on his known ascension date. Estimates his age at the death from very 90 to 91.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
But this pharaoh,
first of all, you're a god because you lived to 91 in that age. Number one. So, what did he do? Did he die on the track? What happened?
he didn't die on the track.
Okay.
Here we go. It's called the Jubilee Pavilion.
Okay.
And it's where they would run. It's kind of like our tracks.
Sure.
Whatever, track and field. And he basically couldn't do it.
Okay. Well,
and so
he's 90 years old.
But when you're a fan, quote unquote, when you're a civilian and you're watching your king/god unable to run, it kind of just basically it started to deteriorate that these people were
because they expected
gods.
Supernatural powers. He was going to run like a young man down this track and not feel like that.
If you're a god, what's going on?
You're right. You're not like a normal human. But I would consider if you lived to 91. How pampered?
Yeah.
First of all, what's your plan? What's your fitness plan?
Yeah.
To live to 91, but I don't know why that blows my mind for me personally. Because you're talking about how many young pharaohs died. Like some of the most famous pharaoh. Who's the most famous pharaoh that died at 10 or 11 years old? Like the life expectancy of Egyptians. I need to know what the median life expectancy was.
So I think it says 19 years old. Pharaoh died.
Okay.
He became the pharaoh at age 9. So he was age 9 to 19 and he died.
Right.
How did he die?
Although his rule was notable for reversing the tumultuous religious reforms of his father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, legacy was largely negated by his successors. So he's kind of like a blip.
How did he die?
Let me see. How did he die? King Tutankhamun.
Oh, Tetekchilon? Is that his name?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
I mispronounce. I probably mispronounced it worse than you just did, to be quite honest with you.
Gangrene infection.
Gangrene. Oof. That's what I'm saying. Of all the things that could kill you in ancient Egypt, 91. To live to 91. You must have held up in a hole.
He was a god to me then.
Yeah. Honestly.
This king who died at age 19, he got gangrene because he broke his leg.
Right. Yeah.
Possibly the result of a broken leg.
Wow.
I think you were thinking of King Tut, Jacob.
Are you sure?
He died in a chariot accident.
Oof.
He was young.
Car wreck.
Royal's death was most likely caused from him being in a weakened state as a result of genetic impairments inherited from his brother and sister parents. Ugh.
So are we not leaning into inbreeding, or are we just going to stay away from that subject?
Yeah, we're going to stay away from that subject.
Okay.
But maybe that's.
I don't know if that happened. I'm not stating that for the record. I'm not stating that happened.
Oh, it did happen.
It probably did, right?
It did happen.
I just figured that was a monarch thing.
It did happen.
Okay.
Maybe that's a good place to end this. I would like to come back to.
Right.
I would like to come back. Yeah. Oh, Jared.
I just Googled gangrene photos and it's. I regret.
Yeah, I regret all your choices right now.
Thank you for that.
No, it's terrible.
But yeah, maybe we can wrap this up here.
Okay.
I would like to get into, again, more on the maps and the ancient civilization that could prove to be notable.
Yeah. Well, there are believed to be lost civilizations to the world of history. It would probably be very ignorant to think that there isn't things that we just know every civilization that ever existed in humanity.
Yeah.
To think that there wasn't like some sort of large, like again, like to be qualified as a civilization, you have to have, order, an actual kind of like grouping. There's actual qualifications to it.
Yeah.
But to believe that we know everyone that ever existed, I think is pretty ignorant.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of glaring holes again in the Orthodox view.
For sure.
Graham Hancock has been a big liberator of that, which I've been deep into. He's got some good books if you're interested to read.
But there's so much you could go off of this whole subject in general, because you're talking about there was a
the maps was interesting side research that came off of really diving into the pyramids, which I want to do more about the Egyptians in general. I know we got into
this should definitely be a part 1 because there's so much.
There's so much. I definitely want to do a part 2 because there's so much stuff, just interesting facts about the people and their religion. And, they had tattoos. Like, that was a big thing for them. Like, women, there was found recently skin of women that was tattooed, like, head to toe.
They were cool.
Really? Yeah. Like, they had stuff going. It wasn't just, I don't know, maybe in my own mindset, how I viewed old civilizations or old people, I put it in a box just from what I've read or watched growing up. So it's just interesting to see.
There's also, I would have to go more research into it, but there's something I want to research into about this was a civilization that believed that men ruled, right? Like it was more men based. And there was a woman pharaoh at one point that kind of got erased from history. That kind of dressed up as a man in pharaoh uniform. Not that people didn't believe or know that she was a woman, but like there's a very interesting story there where even her tomb, I believe, was like they tried to scrape her name from the history books after she died. But she ruled for a long time. It wasn't like a blip.
The oppression of women has been going on for a long time.
Oh, God, yeah.
Jesus. Okay, yeah, we have to get into that. But
there's so much stuff on Egypt that you could dive into.
So let's note this as part 1 of 2 or 3.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, good talk.
Yeah.
This is really good. Well-researched.
Thanks.
No, this is really good. This is really good. We're still getting our feet underneath us on like how we're figuring out,
going through it was
how this all plays out. Yeah.
I hope people learn stuff. Yeah. I learned a lot. Again, it's easy to read and kind of like consume it, but then to be able to expel it again after,
with your own thoughts and opinions mixed in. Yes,
I learned a lot just sitting here.
Cool. So.
And honestly, if you have any opinions on what we just talked about or questions on some of this stuff, we'd love to look up more stuff because obviously we're going to do more episodes. But we do have official Twitter now. So you can go follow us on that. All you have to do is type in
Casual X History, right?
Casual X History. We also have an Instagram if you want to follow some of that stuff. We'll just be obviously just posting about our new episodes.
Maybe some different
stuff
facts
that we do. Yeah, maybe some history facts on historical days. I'd be down for that.
Thank you, Jared, for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you learned something, but
I learned a lot.
Honestly, it was just fun. It's fun to take a little bit of a back seat and listen. And again, because I feel like everybody knows little bits and pieces of things that they've heard.
Yeah.
But like to actually do research on those things and kind of start piecing those two together are very interesting.
I definitely had to rebuild my
idea.
My left to right.
Yeah.
Around this. Yeah. And so that was an important thing I didn't really get into, but there's so much in between from the beginning of the Orthodox View to the Great Pyramid of Giza, then from that on to the Dark Age that happened in between the split up. There's so much there of just history. Think about that, how many thousands of years they were together.
Right.
It blows my mind that we think we're 2000 AD now, we're 2020, and we look how much have happened in the last 100 years for us.
Oh, yeah.
So to think that things don't change and flux so quickly back then,
the amount of history in between those two bookmarks or bookends are
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown and cool things I think to explore. But
yeah, completely.
Awesome.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. This is brand new for us, and we're learning as we go. And if you learned something,
give us a good review on Apple Podcasts.
That would help us out so much.
5 stars.
5 stars.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. See ya.